She is everywhere, and she is nowhere. Her image is carved into every wall of Lindale. Her name is spoken with reverence, with fear, with grief. The entire world of the lands between was built in her honor and then broken by her own hand. Queen Marika the Eternal, God, vessel, mother, destroyer, and yet, despite being the most important figure in all of Elden Ring's lore, we never truly meet her. Not really. We find her shattered, we find her imprisoned, we inherit the ruin she left behind. So today, we are going to do what the game itself refuses to do, piece Marika together. From her origins as a persecuted shaman girl to her ascension into godhood, to the moment she raised her hammer against the very order she built and shattered it all. This is the full story of Queen Marika the Eternal. Before Marika was a god, before she was eternal, before she was even a queen, she was a girl living in a place called the Shaman Village, hidden deep within the realm of shadow, sometimes called the Land of Shadow. This realm exists veiled and concealed, cut off from the lands between by a great veil. Marika was a Numen, a long-lived people who came up from outside the lands between. Her kin were called shamans, and they lived, unfortunately, under the shadow of a civilization that despised them. The Haunset, a honored people tied to the ancient crucible. The primordial essence of life held dominion over this realm, and they had developed a practice of so horrifying, so depraved, that it's almost difficult to describe plainly. The Haunset believed that shaman flesh was uniquely mending, that is, harmonized with other bodies in ways ordinary flesh did not. So they used it. Criminals and shamans alike were captured, butchered, and stuffed, still living into massive jars. They were forced to be reborn as so-called saints, human beings grounded up and repurposed for civilization's grotesque ritual. Most of Marika's kin were taken this way, kidnapped, sacrificed. Marika survived. Exactly how she survived, whether she endured some of these rituals herself or was sheltered by some intervention, the lore leaves deliberately unclear. But she survived, and she was noticed. The two fingers, agents of a cosmic power called the Greater Will, recognized something in Marika. She was an Empyrean, a candidate for godhood, a soul capable of becoming a vessel for the Elden Ring, the physical embodiment of the Greater Will's divine order. And to protect this chosen girl, the two fingers gifted her a shadow-bound beast, her own half-brother, Malekith the Black Blade, bound to serve as her loyal shadow and guardian. The girl who had watched her people be devoured had now been chosen to inherit the world. But here is the first thing to understand about Marika, and it will become a theme that echoes through everything she ever did. She never forgot where she came from. She never forgot the jars. She never forgot the Haunset, and gods, it seems, do not forgive easily. The place where Marika became a god has a name, Enir Ilim, a tower in the realm of shadow at whose peak sits the gate of divinity. It is a beautiful and terrible place, the architecture of an ascension that would reshape reality itself. At that gate, Marika became the vessel of the Elden Ring. The Elden Ring is not a ring you wear. It is a cosmic artifact, the embodiment of the Greater Will's concept of order. To hold it inside you is to become the living law of an entire world. And from that act, the Earth Tree was born. The Earth Tree, that colossal, luminous, impossibly golden tree that dominates the lands between, exists because Marika holds the Elden Ring. It is her divine power made visible, her rule made manifest, and in the realm of shadow where she ascended, its counterpart sprouted too, the Skadu tree, as shadow of the original. The Haunset, who had tormented her people for generations, witnessed this. They saw the girl who they crushed beneath their civilization rise to become a god. They called it a betrayal. Whether that interpretation carries any weight is something worth sitting with. But Marika was just getting started. Her first act as a god was one of extraordinary cunning. She reached into the Elden Ring and removed the rune of death, also called destined death. Death is a fundamental law of reality. By taking it out of the order, she eliminated true death from the lands between. The dead no longer stayed dead, they were reborn, reincarnated through the grace of the Earth Tree. This is why she is called the Eternal. Under her rule, death itself was defanged. She proclaimed the dawn of a new age with words we can still read today. Let a new epoch begin, an epoch glistening with life, brandished the Elden Ring for the age of the Earth Tree. And so, the Golden Order began. Marika at its center, eternal, radiant, and absolutely in control, for now. A god who holds a realm needs a lot to govern it. Marika chose Godfrey, also known as Horalu, a titanic warrior from a place called Badlands, fierce and brilliant and wholly devoted to her. He became the first Elden Lord. Together, they waged war across the lands between. The war against the giants was perhaps the most consequential early conflict. The fire giants, keepers of the flame of ruin, a force capable of burning the earth tree itself, were Marika's greatest existential threat. She and Godfrey broke them. The fell god worshipped by the giants was defeated, and the surviving giants, Marika cursed them to keep the flame of ruin burning for eternity. Their endless torment repurposed as a kind of cosmic lock, keeping the fire away from the earth tree. A brutal solution, an elegant one. There was also the matter of the Golemite Queen, another Empyrean, who had taken up the rune of death as a weapon through the God-Slayer's great sword. She and her followers, the Godskin Apostles, were an existential threat to Marika's control over destined death. Malekith, Marika's bound shadow, defeated the Golemite Queen and fully secured the rune of death once and for all. The Liurnian Wars brought the glintstone sorcerers of Raya Lucaria and the Carian royal family into conflict with the Golden Order. Even the Striad Academy and its celestial magic bent eventually. But perhaps the most haunting campaign was one Marika never conducted herself. She sent her son, Mesmer the Impaler, into the realm of shadow, back to the land of the Onset, and there, in her name, Mesmer committed genocide. The civilization that had once stuffed shamans into jars was erased. Then the realm of shadow was sealed behind the veil, and Mesmer was left behind, hidden away so that the rest of the world would never know what had been done. Marika's revenge was complete, and it was buried. Once the conquest was done, she returned to the shaman village, her home, the ruins of everything she had come from. She left a golden braid as an offering to the grandmother, a shaman relic of her people, and she bathed the village in golden healing light. She knew no one was left to heal, she did it anyway, and she spoke a declaration, not of triumph but of doubt. I declare my intent to search the depths of the Golden Order through understanding of the proper way our faith, our grace is increased. Those blissful early days of blind belief are losing past. The God was starting to ask questions. Here we have to talk about one of the most mind-bending revelations in all of Elden Ring's lore. After Godfrey's conquest was complete, Marika made a decision. She stripped Godfrey and his warriors of their grace, exiled them from the lands between to grow stronger in the wider world. Her words to him were strange, almost sorrowful. My Lord and thy warriors, I divest each of thee of thy grace. You will wage war in a land afar. Then after thy death, I will give back what I once claimed. This was not abandonment, it was a plan. She was creating the Tarnished, exiled warriors who would return one day, guided by her grace. But who became her second consort in Godfrey's absence? A warrior champion named Radagon, red-haired, devoted to the Golden Order, a figure who had previously married Renella of the full moon in Liurnia, fathering Radhan, Rykard, and Rani. Now here is where things fracture. Radagon and Marika, are the same person. The law of regression incantation used on a specific statue of Lindell physically transformed the image of Radagon into Marika. Melina, echoing Marika's own words, says, "O Radagon, loyal hound of the Golden Order, thought yet to become me, thought yet to become a god, let us be shattered both, mine other self." They are one divine being, split or perhaps always dual, containing two natures in one constant tension. Marika, who grew disillusioned with the Golden Order, Radagon, who remained loyal to it on to the very end. They shared a body, a history, and a fracture at the center of their soul. Even gods, it seems, can be divided against themselves. The Golden Order held for an age, it held. And then came the Night of the Black Knives. Numen assassins drawn from Marika's own people carried out a coordinated assassination using fragments of the stolen Rune of Death. The mastermind was Rani, Marika's own granddaughter, an Imperial seeking to escape the fate the Two Fingers had planned for her. The target was Godwyn the Golden, Marika's beloved son, considered by many to be her favorite, radiant, noble, the perfect heir of the Golden Age. Godwyn was the first demigod to die. The Rune of Death was used on his soul specifically, while his body was left alive, creating a horrific thing called the Prince of Death's corpse, his body still growing and wrapping beneath the roots of the Earth Tree. The Rune of Death had been removed from the Order to prevent exactly this, and yet here it was, weaponized, used on her own son, used on her own golden boy. Marika's response to this grief was not weeping or prayer or warfare. She spoke to her children, her demigods, with words that read less like guidance and more like a wound tearing open. "Hear me, demigods, my children beloved, make of thyselves that which ye desire, be it a lord, be it a god. But should ye fail to become aught at all, ye will be forsaken." She was letting them loose. She was letting go of any pretense of order. And then she did the unthinkable. She took her hammer, the same tool used to forge divine weapons, and she shattered the Elden Ring. The great runes, the pieces of the Elden Ring's power disappeared. Each landed with a demigod, and the demigods went to war over them. The Shattering War devastated the lands between, leaving in the broken, grace-forsaken place we explore in the game. Radagon, her other self, still loyal to the Golden Order, tried to repair the Elden Ring with the same hammer. He failed. As punishment for her rebellion, the Greater Will, through the Elden Beast, imprisoned Marika inside the Earth Tree itself. The god who had ruled everything was locked away inside the very symbol of her power. She remains there when we find her, crucified, silent, waiting. She shattered the world, and then she waited for someone to come fix it, or perhaps to finish what she started. Marika is, in the final accounting, a god shaped entirely by what was done to her. She came from a people who were grounded up and stuffed into jars. She rose to power through the recognition of a cosmic force that needed a vessel. She waged war, she buried atrocities, she removed death itself from the equation of life, and for a while everything glittered. But the Golden Order she built was not so different from the Haunted civilization she despised. Both ran on the suffering of others, conveniently hidden. Messmer's genocide in the realm of shadow. The Omen twins, her own children, Morgoth and Morg, born with the Crucible's mark, locked away in sewers beneath Lindell because their existence didn't fit the Order's image. Melania, her daughter, by Radagon, afflicted with scarlet rot and denied a cure. Miquella, her son, cursed with eternal youth, unable to grow. The Eternal who abolished death created a world where living could become an unending curse, and so she broke it. Was it grief over Godwyn? Was it a moment of clarity, seeing the Golden Order for what it truly was? Was it the culmination of years of doubt? Those questions she declared at the shaman village. The lore leaves room for all of it. That ambiguity is the point. What we know is this: she had prepared for the aftermath. She had already exiled the Tarnished to grow stronger. She had tasked Hugh the blacksmith with forging a weapon capable of killing a god. She had, in her own way, left breadcrumbs as if she knew or hoped that someone would come to finish what she couldn't. At the end of the game, her crucified body beckons the player. She wants a new consort, a new lord, someone to take up the Elden Ring and begin again. Whether that means rebuilding the Golden Order or replacing it entirely, that's the choice she leaves to us. She is neither villain nor martyr. She is a god who suffered, who conquered, who doubted, and finally, desperately acted. And she is still waiting to see what becomes of the world she grew open. Queen Marika the Eternal, her name is everywhere, her answers are nowhere. That's the genius of how FromSoftware told her story, in fragments, in echoes, in the grief-stricken words of NPCs, and the dust-covered writing on forgotten item descriptions. She was never going to give us a clean explanation, because clean explanations don't survive eternity. What survives is the Earth Tree, the Shattering, the Tarnished, called by the grace. And somewhere inside the golden prison, a god who shattered the world not out of madness but out of something far more human. Loss, doubt, and a fury she had been carrying since she was a girl, watching her people be put into jars. That's the story of Marika, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, there's so much more lore where that came from. Stay golden, stay tarnished.